Hey guys, welcome to Watch Your Struggle. So today let's talk about what a good project is. I mean, I know almost all of you, and even I, when I was younger, had the question like anytime I asked my senior or anyone in the industry, like, what kind of project should I do? What project should I make that I'll get hired in a good place? And all the answers I got was just make a good project. And like, what is a good project? How do you define a good project? To someone who has years of experience and has just started, making something like an Amazon clone would be an amazing project. But then to someone like me or someone who has even more experience than me and has worked, let's say 5, 6, 7 years into like in the industry and making a bare bone Amazon clone, just the website is really bad. I mean, again, that's bare minimum. So I work for Twilio and I'm today going to show you what kind of projects I made that got me into Twilio. Not just Twilio, also other great engineering focused companies. And also going to cover what exactly a good project should be. Okay. So let's with, let's start with some basics. So I'm going to open Excalibur here. Let's move all of this out and let's start. So when we talk about good projects, or I think, not let's not mention them as good projects. Let's talk about projects. As a fresher, there are two things that come into mind. Like, not even as a fresher, but when you look on YouTube and everything, there's two things that you can find, two kind of projects. One is one is making a clone. So let's say um, a Netflix clone. Just a sec, sorry. Netflix clone or an Amazon clone or an extremely basic, social media or a blog website, right? I do not like this font. Let's get back to the original. Yeah. Okay. And another thing that you could build, which a lot of YouTubers do actually recommend you build, uh, things like algorithm visualizer, right? Or basic to-do list. So these are the two kind of projects that you can think of making as a fresher, or you generally make as freshers. Now let's talk about what is wrong with it, are they even right or wrong, or what you should actually do. So, in my personal opinion, this is a very personal opinion that I generally do not like things like this. Like an algorithm visualizer, if you look into it, what is it? Right, let's try to draw a little bit more. I like drawing, it seems. Yeah. So an algorithm visualizer, what is it? Nothing but it's nothing but a simple UI. Simple UI and a few algorithms. Mostly these are generally sorting algorithms, right? Now the problem is if you wanted to show your prowess in understanding and writing sorting algorithms, you are doing that through LeetCode, right? You have LeetCode for that, you have DSA rounds for that, right? So as an interviewer, at least again, this part of this video is a personal opinion. But as an interviewer, if I see someone coming into like I've not done interviews, disclaimer. But if I were doing an interview and if I see someone building something like an algorithm visualizer or doing a visualizer for pathfinding algorithms, that's also something that people do. My only problem is I already know you can do this stuff. I already know you that you can write sorting algorithms because you've crossed the coding round, and it's generally okay. I mean, difficult, or it generally uses at least sorting, like sorting or searching is kind of the bare minimum for engineering roles. But all you're basically showcasing here is a simple UI, and writing basic HTML and CSS is expected out of everyone, right? Like just having a dot sort and then updating everything in real time. It's not that difficult, right? Now let's come to things like these. Okay, these things. The problem is if you look at YouTubers, a few YouTubers, not everyone, they just build the bare minimum functionality. So let's say if you're making a Netflix clone, it is great, but it is great if you can build out either all the features, everything that Netflix has, which is obviously impossible, but at least a multitude of features and you have them working properly. And most importantly, since you are doing something which is very common, actually not exactly for Netflix clone, if you can build a perfect Netflix clone, that is a very good project. Let's come to Amazon clone. Building an e-commerce website for 10 users or in most cases for a college student, 0 users is extremely easy. It's nothing great. But these are the projects that, if done correctly, can convert into amazing, like extremely good projects. So let's say if you were doing an Amazon clone or you were doing a Netflix clone, writing a basic UI and having some kind of video streaming thing done. Obviously, it is not expected out of you that you'd build your own HLS or MPEG Dash streaming algorithms. You'll probably use something like Vimeo or Firebase for that matter. But in these projects, if you end up adding, so these projects become great when you end up adding things like, uh, in Netflix case, a recommendation engine, right? So if you're making like a Netflix clone, then a recommendation engine would be extremely good. Or another thing that you could go into, uh, for Netflix, a recommendation engine would be good for social media project if you're actually dabbling into graph databases and even not using the database to the fullest, but even able to set up graphs and set up relationships between the different nodes or users. That is amazing. That is a really, really good project. And that shows to the interviewer that if I give you enough time, if I give you the documentation or the resources, you have the capability to build anything, right? Another way that you could wing these kind of projects would be something like creating the architecture for it. So these days, even at an entry level job, people are asking for HLD or LLD interviews. Mostly it's not LLD for freshers, it's generally just HLD interviews. But if you are able to, do even bare minimum, infrastructure for it, infra for it, that is great. Because most companies are going to end up using GCP or AWS or something like that. And if you can show the interviewer or show the recruiter that you have worked with these things, at least on a smaller scale, you are familiar with the basic things, then they are in for it, right? That shows how smart you are, or not exactly how smart you are. That again shows the same thing that if I hire this person, I give them enough time and resources, they are able to hack around and make things work, right? So this is how I classify the two, normal or very basic projects that people kind of recommend or people kind of make in the industry to get into jobs. But the thing that worked for me, um, actually before writing about it or talking about it, I'd like to show the kind of projects I made. Right. So this is Gnotify. I made this in college second year and then I repurposed it in fourth year as my final year project. So I'm not sure if this hosted version works because I haven't worked it for a long time, but let's see. Let's get started. Network error. Yeah, it doesn't work right now. But what was this project? So Gnotify was basically it was a mass emailer, right? So what you could do was you could I might have things about it on my blog. Let me just open that up. I can show you some screenshots, and that would be really helpful. Yep. Yeah. So it was a mass emailer. What it's supposed to do is send emails at a huge scale, like scale as big as thousands or five or tens of thousands of mails at once and the same mail at once. So this is the kind of thing that people are not doing. Of course, I didn't end up writing my own SMTP server. I didn't end up doing mail from scratch, but I leveraged GCP and I showed interviews that I can leverage APIs and I can build a product from from scratch. So it had multitude of features. It had a web-based code editor. So you can see there was a code editor here and there was an HTML being rendered out here. Then I had things like storing those email templates. So let's say today you create an account or you log in and you have like a list of 1,000 users that you want to send a promotional mail to, and you have the HTML ready for that profession like promotional mail. So you paste that HTML out there, make some changes if you have to, and then you can send it to 1,000 people, right? And then you can track almost in real time if those people have opened it or not, opened the mail or not, right? Like you can have a simple PNG, and there were some things that I was doing to track it, very basic stuff. It was not foolproof. Of course, the method I was using to track emails, like tracking emails if they're opened or not, is something that most email clients don't allow. So Gmail doesn't allow it, Superhuman doesn't allow it, Outlook doesn't allow it, but there are hacks to doing it. So I implemented one of those hacks. Other things that I did was I showcased how good I am with CRUD. So I had multitude of models working together. I had relationships working together. Then then I also had asset management in it. So if let's say you wanted to host like send a image as part of your mail, you cannot just do a image source dot slash hello.com hello dot txt or like dot png or something, because in the client where it's being rendered, there is no .png available. There's no file system there. So you need to embed a URL in it. And I was managing that. So I had like a whole, I think it should be here. I had a whole asset section, which is this one here, where I let you upload assets here. I let you create, what do we call, pre-signed URLs for it. And then you can, um, what's happening with my English. You can basically embed them into your email and it lets you show those images on your mail. I had other things like I would keep a track of whatever mail that you have sent, if those mails are like how many people have gotten it, how many people have opened it, and things like that. This is one of the projects that I did in college. Right. Take note. Just keep remembering these. I'll give you at the end of this video, like after the section, I'll tell you the pointers that I actually took. Right. So another project that I did in my college was this one. This is a live variable bitrate live streaming server. So I was trying to work on something. I was planning a different project, which was a much bigger project. And there I figured out I need to find out a way to do variable bitrate live streaming, right? And there are solutions that I could have used. I could have used Vimeo, I could have used AWS, but I wanted to see and learn how these things actually work, right? So I made my own variable bitrate live streaming server. So what happens here is if you upload a video, I chunk it down using FFmpeg, and then I create all the M8U8 files, all the playlist files, and then I send it down the server. So it was extremely interesting, and it is something that you wouldn't expect someone out of college to know, because just knowing what variable bitrate live streaming means is a lot for a kid to like a college kid to know. I was not even I didn't even know about it. I also had played around with it. Obviously, it is nowhere close to production. I mean, if I personally install like clone this repository, install the dependencies, and try to run it, there's a very low chance it'll work perfectly. But at least I had tried about it. I'd learned about it. I had written things here. I had written a whole blog about it, showcasing that I do understand how it works. So there should be a blog somewhere down. Yeah, like live streaming basics. So I had a whole blog about it, talking about how live streaming works, what are different protocols, why I took HLS, and all those kind of things, right? So that is another project I did. Another one that I'm actually very proud of is Sapphire. So it is nothing interesting. It was an attempt to making a templating engine. So if people watching this video know about handlebars, or people or about Jinja, those are templating engines, right? So You in your HTML you embed some kind of logic and like you want to do conditional rendering kind of stuff, so you use templating. React in itself is sort of a templating engine, not exact like JSX is a templating language and React does some things like not exactly a templating engine, but something similar. This is horrendous. Like the implementation is extremely bad. Like if today, even back then, I knew that it's really, really bad. So the way I was doing these, handling these kind of conditions was something as bad as looping over the whole string, trying to find this, like trying to find my tokens and doing all of that. This is a very bad way of doing it. And even back then, I knew I had compiler design and system software as part of my curriculum, and I knew how what lexical analysis is, what all those kind of stuff is. This was a very very bad way of doing it, but at least by I tried it, and while doing this, I learned a lot of things. And again, this is the kind of project that most junior devs or most college students would never think of. They wouldn't even think of like try to understand how these things work. But I was doing that in college, right? What else was I building in college? I had a few other good projects. So splitwise algorithm is one of those. So it might sound simple, like most of you guys would have used the app splitwise, right? It looks very simple, but if you think about it, it's actually a very different, very, very difficult algorithm, especially the simplify payments algorithm and the way it works across groups, across users is amazing. And the only way I thought, like, there are multiple ways of doing it, but I genuinely thought that using something like a graph and a graph database would actually, be a very, very good way or a very good solution to it. So I tried dabbling around in it. I didn't really do much. I, yeah, I actually didn't end up doing much. I wrote a very basic script, but at least I learned about Cypher, which is an SQL equivalent to graph databases. So I did things like that. Was there anything else, any big project which I actually went? So these are the projects that I'm talking about right now are the projects that I have on my resume. So I also have stuff like Code Golf and like CodeShare. These things are also really good projects. So Code Golf was a website I had made it for my club, DSC. So what happened was a bunch of people could log in. They again had a web-based browser. They had a way to solve problems. So there were five problems, five coding problems, and you had to solve them with the least number of characters, right? So let's say the language was obviously simplified. So if someone is using Python and someone is using C, number of characters are extremely different. Extremely different. Like Python uses much, much, much less number of characters. So it was all done in C, and so yeah, I mean that's the crux. You just need to solve all the problems with the least number of characters. So for this, I had a code runner on my backend. So I was running the code that people actually, submitted. I had a what do we call it? A code editor on the website. So, I think this link doesn't work. Yeah, the website has changed. So I had a code editor that people could use, and I had a code runner. Though both of those things are actually things that you don't expect people to have, or especially college students to have on their resumes or on their projects. So this actually, now that I think of it, sounds a lot like me praising myself. But I just want to show you the kind of projects I built and the kind of things that I did to, land a bunch of internships and a good job. So even like I have also done smaller things like weather app, but this is a simple, very simple web page that shows you weather based on your location and stuff. But only if it decides to work, location access is not working. Yeah, hello. And brother, brother, please work. The hell did it crash? Last time I saw this was working. Yeah, I think it crashed. Under.js, PNG. Not sure. I'll debug this later. But even this was not your everyday static website. What I was doing was I was actually dabbling around with things like Pug. So Pug is another templating language which is used a lot when you're making extremely big websites because it boils down the syntax to really, really smaller level. So instead of having a div class flex hyphen main, you can just do a dot flex hyphen main, and that'll just in post create a whole div in it. Right. So if I look at the dist, I think I did upload the build for it. Yeah. Look at index.html. It's minified, but you can see it converts all of those. So you have the flex main, bottom, whatever. It converts all of those into an HTML file, which is minified and optimized for the browser. So I was trying to learn Pug and Sass for this, and I actually ended up setting my biggest win from this project was not Pug and Sass. My biggest win was figuring out how to configure Webpack properly, how Webpack even works, how to set a Webpack to, go to this script, try to fetch all of this, and try like convert my Pug into HTML, convert my Sass into CSS, and all those kind of things. So so after showing you all of these projects, what I actually want to tell you guys is I categorize my projects only if I could type, man. Yeah. I categorize my projects into two different categories. One, one category is things I wanna learn, right? So under this category, I'll put projects like, variable bitrate live streaming thing. I'll put projects like weather app, right? Because I learned Pug and stuff. Variable bitrate live streaming, I learned things like what a variable bitrate live streaming server is, what are the different protocols and all those kind of things. I'll also put something, yeah, actually, what else can I put? I can put a few things here. I can put reverse coding into this, I can put code wolf into this, so things like that, right? And the other category that I like to put my projects in is straight up products or solutions, right? So under this, I'll put things like Gnotify because that was a huge project. I'll put things like what else can I put here? I can put things like Reach, but that is something that I'm building right now, so not that much. I was also working on something called Superfans, so that could go here. I had a thing called Create React App V2. So yeah, so this is pretty simple. Just the things that I want to learn, the more technically advanced things that I wanted to learn, and the most important thing here is like in this category. Before I had things like variable bitrate and stuff. I had things like React portfolio, right? Because back in my first year or second year, I was trying to learn React, and that's why I had that here. At some point, I also had something like a Firebase project, right? Because I was trying to learn that. So this category of projects would have things that you want to learn, and you want to learn it nicely. And one thing that I want everyone to remember and always keep in mind that even if you're trying to learn something, if you're trying to, let's say I'm trying to learn variable bitrate live streaming, right? Let's just call it VB. Let's say I'm trying to learn VB. That doesn't mean the other aspects of my code would be really bad. Even though it is a project that I'm making to learn new things, it has to have a good UI because I have learned good UI. It has to have good code practices, or at least code practices that I know till now. It has to take care of, what else? It has to have good REST API rules or something like that. Like if it has some APIs, they should be set up in a nice way. So so what I'm trying to say is, even if you're learning, show your progression in those projects. If you're making something because you're learning something, it should show your earlier learnings, right? If that makes sense. And the second one, product or solutions, is the category that I put in stuff that I actually want to use. So Gnotify, Reach, Superfans, all of these projects are there because I wanted to build something. I wanted to build a product. I had so how Gnotify came into the picture was when I became the DSE lead. When I started working with DSE, as a volunteer or as a lead, I wanted to send mails to all of the people who wanted to interview with us for different roles in the core team. So
Instead of sending those mundane, hey, can we catch up at this time tomorrow, in a mail, I ended up writing a Python script which took a bunch of HTML, some bunch of very good looking HTML, not very good looking, pretty good looking HTML, and sent it to those guys. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. I sent all of my friends, all of my potential hires, or like whatever, a very nice looking, professional looking email. I don't find a free service for it. Why don't I write an open source version of it? Like, hey, here's the code, set up a Google account, put these things in, and voila, you have a very nice looking mask mailer. So it starts with a script, it goes into thinking about features, thinking about limitations, and then becoming a product. And oh my god, the amount of things I learned with this product or this project was amazing. Reach is again something like that. Superfans was inspired by Ben Award's Hyperfans. Create React App V2. So these three is what I call products, right? So these three would come in the products category. But this will come into a solution category. So back then, we didn't have Next, and one of the good ways, or one of the most like simplest way of creating a React app was using npx create React app. But I didn't like the features it had. It did not generate good. I mean, it generated good code, but it had a bunch of bloatware. It didn't set up a lot of things for me. So most of my React projects would go with Firebase. So in this React app v2, I had like a flag. If you enable that, it would just create set up Firebase for you, and it would set up something like Bulma or Bootstrap with React app and something. So this was a legit solution that I wanted. I For a long time I was having problems with create with a good starter for my React projects. I mean, of course, there were boilerplate or starter projects out there, but most of my React apps were pretty simple, and I was into the context API stuff very quick, so I generally didn't want a state management thing. And back then, all of the boilerplates used to come with Redux. I never learned Redux. I'm learning it now because we use a lot of Redux in our projects, so I'm learning it now. But back then there was no this. hmm, I didn't need Redux basically, or most of the projects I was making didn't require Redux. Then yeah, so things like that. That is what I mean by a good project. And to be honest, if you wanna go make a Netflix clone and Amazon clone, that's great. That's also a good project if you can pull it off nicely. If you can put like a good recommendation engine into your Amazon clone or Netflix clone, or if you can put a good infrastructure, or at least you set up the infrastructure on your own, those are very good projects as well. So that's about it. And this video was inspired because I was listening to a podcast recently, and there people were talking about how junior devs or like freshers have projects, but they're just namesake projects, and half of those people don't even know what they're writing. They just follow some other YouTuber creating. So you can actually, no cap, just go on YouTube, search for coding projects, and you'll find thousands of videos, 4 or 5 hours long, where a person is just sitting in front of camera and coding out a live project. I do that too, but I do that because I'm building my own product. I do not do that so that you can create projects out of it. So yeah, that is about it. But again, if you're building projects, the most important part is learning out of it. Until unless you don't learn the project, like learn about the things that you're using in the project, it's useless. Because if you make a project, let's say if you make Gnotify, or you go and clone Gnotify from my GitHub, and then in an interview the interviewer asks you about it, you can't answer, you are done, you're dead meat. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.